Hey friend, how are you? I'm grateful to see you. I am big on gratitude. If you've been following me since the beginning, you know that that's what I lead with. And it's because it's key to so many things. If you're not feeling good, if you lean into gratitude, things shift. I've experienced this myself. You know how I am. I love learning from others. Let's see what someone else has to say about gratitude. And then we'll come back in a minute, or two, or a few.
Let's talk about gratitude. And to begin, I'd like to emphasize the various aspects of mental and physical health that have been shown to benefit from a regular gratitude practice. There are studies showing that performing a gratitude practice twice or three times, or even just once a week, can lead to a pervasive, a long-lasting impact on subjective well-being. People report feeling happier, more meaning, joy, even awe for their life experience, simply in response to adding a gratitude practice. The key thing is it has to be the right gratitude practice, and we're going to talk about what the right gratitude practice looks like in just a little bit. But there are additional benefits of a gratitude practice. There are studies showing that a regular gratitude practice can provide resilience to trauma in two ways. It can provide a reframing and resilience to prior traumatic experiences, so buffering people against the negative physiological effects and psychological effects of earlier trauma, but also inoculating them in many ways to any traumas that might arrive later in life. So that's a powerful thing. And today we will talk about how that's actually accomplished. It's actually accomplished by shifting the way that the fear and defense networks in the brain actually function. We'll get right down into the details of that. The other thing that a gratitude practice does is it's been shown to benefit social relationships, but not just for the relationship in which you express gratitude, right? So on the face of it, you might think, okay, if I express gratitude for somebody over and over, then I'm going to feel better about that person. And indeed, that is one effect of a gratitude practice that's called a pro-social or intersocial gratitude practice. But there are now several studies, recent studies in good journals, pointing to the fact that a regular gratitude practice can also enhance one's social relationships across the board in the workplace, at school, with family, in romantic relationships, and even one's relationship to themselves, which is really what the subjective feelings of well-being are. So it's clear to me that an effective gratitude practice has an outsized effect on many, many aspects of mental and physical health. And for those of you that are coming to this conversation thinking, gratitude practice, oh, that's kind of wishy-washy or woo, it's going to involve, putting your hand on your heart and feeling into all the amazing things that you happen to have, even when things are really terrible. That's not where we're going at all. And equally important is to understand that the neurochemical, the anti-inflammatory, and the neural circuit mechanisms that gratitude can invoke are equally on par with some of the effects of pharmacology, of things like high-intensity interval training and exercise, and other things that we think of as kind of more potent forms of self-intervention. So if you are of the mindset that a gratitude practice is kind of weak sauce, buckle up, because the data actually point to the fact that a gratitude practice is a very, very potent way in which you can steer your mental and physical health in positive directions, and that those effects are very long-lasting. Succinct way of saying all this is, yes, indeed, we might be wired or in such that we have a greater propensity for unhappiness than happiness, but gratitude practices, provided they are the effective ones and they are performed regularly, can shift those circuits such that we are happier on average, even when we are not performing those practices. So as we start to build out our ideal gratitude practice, we know that it has to have certain features. First of all, it has to be grounded in a story, probably a story that you've heard in its entirety at least once. But then you can have a shorthand version, the so-called bullet points that I talked about before, that allow you to drop into that story or the emotional associations with that story. So you don't have to listen to the whole story each time. And that story should be one in which you are genuinely being thanked for something and it made you feel good. Or it could be a story about someone else genuinely expressing thanks. Okay, based on this description of the gratitude practices that we talked about earlier. Your gratitude practice can be very brief. It can be as brief as 1 minute, 60 seconds, or 5 minutes, which still seems very brief to me, although in these studies, they were getting these really major effects just from 5 minutes of gratitude practice. Some of these papers involve people doing some focusing on their breathing and calming themselves as they go into the gratitude practice, but that's within the 5-minute block. So if you decide that you're going to do a gratitude practice that involves first, doing some calming breathing, exhale emphasized breathing, for instance, or physiological sighs, things I've talked about before on this podcast that can help calm you down because they have a lot of exhales, which you now know slows your heart rate down, and then doing your gratitude practice, that's fine. It's actually not necessary, but a lot of these studies used that. I think once a narrative has been set, you've heard the story and it has meaning for you, or you have a recollection of a story where you were genuinely thanked, then I think just 60 seconds or maybe 120 seconds should be sufficient. Then the question becomes how often to repeat this gratitude practice. That's not exactly clear from the existing literature. I can't point to any one study that says 5 times a week or 4 times a week. So I'm going to throw out a number, which is 3 times a week. And then people will ask, well, when should I do that gratitude practice? And I'll tell you what I tell most everybody about most every practice, with a few exceptions, which is the best time of day to do this practice is when you first wake up in the morning, or before you go to sleep at night, or any time of day.
I'm grateful for that message. Now, don't get me wrong. I do know that it takes more than a thank you or being grateful for something in order to change things. However, I also know that gratitude is one very important part to experiencing a shift and manifesting what it is that you want in this life. You know what else I'm grateful for? I'm grateful for you, for following me, liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. Remember, friend, be grateful for what you have, big and small. And if you have a few minutes, you're capable of big things. I'll see you next time.